What's up guys, my name is XANAA, and hi, how's it going? Today I'm gonna be talking about Need for Speed Underground 2, a game a lot of us Need for Speed fans are very familiar with. However, I for one did not grow up playing this game, and so what do I think about the game? Does it still hold up? Is it still as good as it was when it came out? Well, let's find out. So, given where we left off with Need for Speed Underground, yeah, that was quite the unbelievable success. Whatever profitable success the other games made and times it by 15, and that was this game. Each individual Need for Speed game, that is. But that success did not happen overnight though. This likely took another few years, but with the immediate success this game did have, it made complete sense to make a sequel to Underground. So they did, and what did they call it? Yep, okay, I could have guessed. Black Box got back to work following the immediate effect of Underground's success, and so November 9th, 2004, Need for Speed Underground 2 came out for PCs in North America. Luckily, a week and a bit later, it came out on all other consoles for America, and in Europe, well, the consoles that are not handhelds, that is. Handhelds. I mean, it came out for the Game Boy Advance and for the DS, and I mean, yeah, you can play them. Then a PSP version was developed and called Underground Rivals, which I thought was its own spin-off. And then there's also, like with the first game, a special edition release that's a Japan exclusive called Underground 2 Shadow. And just like the first game, it doesn't appear to really add any additional content to the game outside from more added vinyls. So is Underground 2 gonna be a direct sequel, picking things up from where the first game left things off? Or is it gonna be its own thing entirely? Well, let's find out. Well, we have the career mode, quick race, online, LAN play, along with customized profile manager and options. So once more, let's dive right into the career mode and get to the action. I'll be talking about whatever story this game has, so again, click ahead to this timestamp if this really matters to you and don't want to get spoiled. And with that, let's get on with the video. So, the story is a direct sequel to the first game and picks up from when you beat Eddie and his gang called the Eastsiders. The player, now referred to as the best street racer, is called after the events of the first game by a bald guy with an invitation to join his team. Not take a no for an answer. The player then hangs up the call and drives to the celebratory party. While making your way to the party, you're in a call with Samantha and you get ambushed by a Hummer. The Hummer proceeds to ram and wreck your skyline and makes a call to confirm he took care of a problem. 6 months later, the player is back and boards a plane to make his way to Bayview with a good luck note from Samantha, with it also mentioning that she'll have her friend Rachel sort you out when you get there. When you arrive at Bayview, you take her car and Rachel will be waiting for you at the dealership. And you buy your first car with the player's insurance on his totaled Nissan Skyline, and starts racing again. This time around, Rachel basically stands in for Samantha as your contact, who will inform you about what's going on in Bayview, and soon enough, the player gains a following and sponsorship deals from winning races, and this attracts the attention of the Wraiths, a racing group led by their leader, Caleb. Rachel then reveals to the player that Caleb is attempting to take control of the racing scene in Bayview by manipulating the sponsorship deals in his favor. Towards the end game, Caleb attempts to have the player lose an Underground Racing League tournament by placing Nikki, also a Wraith member, in the same tournament as the player. This fails and Nikki then leaves the Wraiths after Caleb berates her for losing, and she joins the player and Rachel's side. Nikki warns them about Caleb's plan if he takes over the city's street racing scene, as she also reveals Caleb to be the driver of the Hummer that wrecked the player's car in Olympic City. In the endgame, desperate to stop the player, Caleb eventually puts all of the remaining Wraith members in an Underground Racing League tournament against the player. This fails, and after losing another sponsor, Caleb challenges the player to a 5-lap showdown. The player wins the race and celebrates with Rachel and Nikki, while Caleb is left bankrupt and defeated. That event solidifies the player's status as the best underground racer in Bayview, and that's the plot. So, the plot is simple, but they did manage to cram a ton of story into it, and I actually like how things turned out. But that being said, let's get to some actual gameplay. So again, I'll be playing the PC version on hard difficulty. Like with the first game, there's not really any difference in terms of content, it's just that the PC version looks nicer and that you can do more with it. But there is content locked behind regional differences. However, when you take a side-to-side comparison of both underground games, good god, what a difference. You can actually see! Well, like I said earlier, Rachel left her 350Z at the airport and told us to meet with her at the dealership, and then we get back to work. Quite literally, you can do the first 3 opening events in her 350Z. But wow, it's all open world now, guys. You can drive to wherever you like, sorta, and drive up to the dealerships and race events. There's even random money lying around whenever you explore. Who even does that? Again, I wonder what stopped them from doing this in the last game, since having an open world map to drive on wasn't an unknown concept at this point. Or maybe they did, but they just didn't quite know what to do with it. Anyway, we make it to the dealership and choose a starter car. There's the 206, the Focus, the Corolla, the 240SX, the 106, and Vauxhall Corsa. And well, you know what's about to happen.
Alright, party puppy, that's it, mental taking this one away. Wicked.
So we pick our car and get to racing. Once more, the general feel of car control feels fantastic. The physics and game respond to what you want it to do very well. It never feels awkward or disappointing when you do make a mistake, and I find the game nice and quick to pick up. The nitro system also having a huge upgrade. Now whenever you install nitro to your car, you can regain it by making close calls to traffic or drifting, which is pretty neat. Then next up, the events. We have circuit racing, bog standard, do your racing around a track of some sorts. Then a sprint race is your typical A to B event. There's drifting, and you can probably guess what's coming. The drag racing returns, and once more you're forced to shift up manually. But I reckon anyone could imagine what a drag race is in a racing game.
If the other guy gets past you, just chill and slide into his slipstream and sit in his draft. Gain precious speed, and then make your move to bounce right on by. This is gonna be big, dog.
And then there are outruns. You challenge some bozo you drive by and immediately start a 1v1 sprint race against them. It's not a literal sprint race, the winner basically outpaces the other one, but it follows a similar formula. Then there's these Street X events. They're closed off to the public and have you just driving on a track with tight corners. There are special events, and usually you can have your picture taken here, or you need to drive somewhere to meet up with a photographer within a set amount of time. And then there's the URL events. The Underground Racing League events will have players compete against each other in a closed environment at either the airport or a proper race course. It's a tournament with a point system that tallies up after each race. Then there's also SUV races. It's just an optional category for these beasts, and then there will be hidden races throughout the open world. The career works as following. You have a basic progression system, and when you sign a sponsor, you'll be required to do the following events it asks you to do. However, since you have to drive up to each event and can't just teleport to them like in other games, I usually just play whichever event is closest to me, and from there on out, passage event in one clean swoop, since you'll have to do them anyway at some point. The career is divided into 5 stages, and once again, to keep track of your progress, I'd say bringing up this menu gives you a good idea of what your primary objective should be. Then you'll progressively unlock more URL events, and when winning those, you'll unlock new cars, and unlike the first Underground, in this game you have multiple garage slots allowing you to save multiple cars. You'll unlock an extra portion of a map and an extra car slot when moving on to the next stage. When wanting to buy another car and don't have space, you would need to trade in a car. This doesn't seem to cost anything, but unlike in the first Underground, all upgrades and parts don't carry over to that new car. Then for some of the special events, you'll be required to tune your ride to a certain reputation level. Similar to how in the first game you need rep in order to enter certain events. You'll then progress on to the next stage, a bit of story will be sprinkled in, opponents will have faster and more upgraded rides, and you'll just have to do it all over again, and that's basically this game's career mode. So that's basically this game. You sort of autopilot through a lot of the events, and sometimes there will be a bit of story sprinkled in, but it's not at the center of your mind. So, what is it people enjoy about this game? Perhaps to take a bigger look at the overall picture, is that you get a lot more freedom than in the first game. I mean, look at all this stuff that there's available to do. And you can do it whenever you want to. If you'd want to tune your car right now, you'd have to drive to one of the shops in order to get it done. On the way there, you might randomly get called about an event being arranged nearby. And so again, that is like another thing for you to do at that point. Then while free roaming trying to find it, Rachel might call you again about some company wanting to put out a magazine with your car on it, but they'll only show up when you tune your car past 3 stars. For example. So what do? Tune that son of a bitch! So we have the tuning I want to talk about. As you might have noticed, not everything has been moved into one garage or warehouse. The shops where you can get some work done on your car are scattered around this map, which means it will leave you driving around the entire map if you're indecisive. So once again, we have the car lot, your basic dealership. There is an increase in American and European cars, but it's still predominantly Japanese cars. Like I said earlier, if you own a PAL copy of the game, you're given the Peugeot 106 and the Vauxhall Corsa. But having an NTCS copy of the game replaces those 2 cars with the Acura RSX and the Honda Civic. Nowadays, you can solve wanting to play a certain regional copy with emulation, just download it and boot it up. But we can also solve these problems on PC by modding, of course. So you choose your car, and next up, I always take my car to the graphics shop, and to start off, I'll choose a color. Whichever ones there are. I think it's lame they aren't all unlocked from the get-go, and then I'll also put a vinyl on it if they have any that I like. There's again a limit to how much stuff you can apply to your car, and it will always be set in a certain place. Then I take my car to the performance shop to fully upgrade it, a pretty simple progress. Then I go to the body shop, and this is one of 2 places to seriously increase that visual rating. The thing about this rating is that you'll need to increase it in order to take pictures with certain magazines. This is good. The downside to that is that there's some seriously ugly looking ones, like goddamn, this is bad. It takes a bit of puzzling to fit something together that's not butt ugly or makes any of the vinyls look out of place. So then I decide to spray paint some junk onto this car. And then finally we go to the car specialities shop. This is where most of the new stuff has been added. Custom gauges and neons, window tint and light, nitro purge and hydraulics, trunk audio and spinners, and there's split doors and hoods. There's a lot to unfold. So usually what I like to do is have one car I do all the racing with and still have it look semi-decent, and then another car that is this. It's my it doesn't matter car. And so you'll have a car that you turn from this into this and can be super satisfied about with yourself. And that basically covers most I want to talk about in this game, as I'm running out of things to say at this point. So let's get to rounding things up. Well, first off, I want to talk about the music, since last game's music really made me want to talk about this stuff again. I've played the older Need for Speed games that have had a composer make the music for the games, but since the release of Hot Pursuit 2, they insisted on adding licensed music by other music artists to create a licensed soundtrack called EA tracks. There were a few decent songs in Hot Pursuit 2, and about half of the music in Underground 1 I thought was really enjoyable, but this game sorta dropped that ball, in my opinion. Outside from Riders of the Storm or Black Betty, most of the soundtrack is pretty dull to me. Some of the rap tunes you hear on the menus are alright I suppose, but when like booting up Underground 1 for the first time in 3 years, I don't know what I was expecting, but the music hit me with an odd sense of nostalgia, like you're seeing old friends again or something. This game really doesn't even have that for me. Don't get me wrong, I'd still rather experience this game over this, but that's kind of where the rest of the game falls flat to me. Now, here is something I want to cheers over. I'm gonna be talking about mods, with the first one being adding custom music. What it breaks down to is you convert the MP3 song you want to a file the game recognizes, and then you import it into the game and rename the files of the track you've replaced it with. For instance, this game's time period is 2004, so I like adding music that came out around this time and before the game came out. So I went with Eiffel 65, I'm Blue, what do you mean, it just makes sense. I'm blue, okay, now since I'm playing on a modern PC, you'll need to install the 1.4 update. Chuck a widescreen onto it and a no CD patch fix, and it's all looking good. Then there's your basic car mods. You see something you like, replace it with another car, and you're good to go. However, the game has come as far as being able to add on cars to your game without having to replace anything anymore. The full tutorial will be down below, but what it boils down to is getting a program called Binary and importing the car into the game. Booyah! Moi's car! I'm also recommending you install a mod called the XtraOptions mod. Essentially, you get yourself an entire cheats engine with this one. Modify things to your heart's content. I mean, I prefer playing through vanilla copies of the game the most. However, there's some cool cheats here. One allows you to just add the regional vehicles to the copy of your game. So you add those vehicles to the game, change the code and launch the US launcher, and voila! Suck on that! Regions! And in my instance, when I played through the whole game, I never unlocked all the vinyls and even metallic finish. So I cheated them in, and now I can enjoy life at its beauty. And then once more, there's a ton of graphics mods, but the one I like the best is this foggy daytime one. I think it looks pretty sick. And as you can expect, EA pulled the plug on online a few years ago, but there's now still people who run servers and are playing it. Now I know I've made everything sound pretty simple, but if you have any questions, be sure to leave them in the comments and I'll try to help out. Please be sure to check out all the mods and support the creators, as they'll be linked down below in the description. And that being said, what's my conclusion to this funny racing game? Well, my general opinion is that it's a racing game that's aged really well. I like it. I'd say I like the first Underground better since that game's overall pacing is quicker, and I like its presentation better. It's a shorter and smaller game, and for me as a busy adult, that's a nice thing. That's not to discredit Underground 2 in any way, shape or form. It's great we can free roam around and just drive up to the events. And once more, both console games have huge graphical differences between one another. It's a huge step up from one game to another. The tuning was the best it ever was up to that point, and everything was bigger. The world is bigger and still looks amazing. There's more cars and events, but for me, still, while I do really enjoy Underground 2, I would probably rather do a repeat playthrough of the first game, and that's absolutely no fault of this game. I simply enjoy the first game better. In terms of pros and cons, the game functions beautifully and driving around feels fantastic. The AI functions as good as it should, but not always. Sometimes they aren't very aware of you, and rubber banding is still very much a thing. I played on the hardest difficulty for about 3/5 of the game, but from stage 4 onward, I just kept it on normal because my god, the AI becomes a pain in the dick. Let me just show you some footage I feel like sort of explains my frustrations with this game, because the AI functions as if they're all a wild pack of hyenas out to get to you, like, Jesus. And I want to talk about the game's pacing. Now, the first time I played this, I played through the whole game on easy, and when I got to the last stage, I remember not unlocking the final URL event. Now, I don't remember if it had to do with bringing my car to reputation level 10, but I thought I did so, and it still didn't unlock the last event. And so, on a second playthrough of this game, only when I got to the 5th stage, I realized I played through the entire game on normal, and when beating the final few events, I was able to complete the game. So I figured it was like a hidden XP type of situation, where doing stuff on easy doesn't give you as much XP, and so you'll be forced to grind more XP, doing either the hidden races or doing outrun events. So I'm still not exactly sure what the deal was with that, but on the topic of pacing, while I don't mind driving all over the map in order to play an event, when I got to the end of stage 4, I was completely lost on what to do. Nothing was showing up, and I had a sneaking suspicion I just had to get my car up to reputation level 6. But the game didn't boost my reputation level to 6 when I equipped the latest body parts and, you know, this sort of stuff. But I only managed to get to rep level 6 anyway from just applying the same vinyl over and over, which completely broke any kind of pacing the game had for me. Like, seriously, this is what I was supposed to do? Also, again, it would have been nice to have cops be in the game, but I also understand we had to wait one more year in order to see some of that juicy action return. And overall, I complained about it already, but the final portion of the game, having to deal with the AI was just a nightmare. Like, goddamn does this suck. But as an overall package, this is a very decent game. I would play it again casually, and maybe as time goes on, I'll grow to appreciate it more. Just for the record, it is in the clear from most other mediocre Need for Speed games. It's just that my time personally playing it and having to rush it out for this review, I did have some gripes with some of the game's features, but generally speaking, I did have a really good time with it, and that's where I'm gonna be leaving it. So, that's gonna be it. Thoughts? Feelings? Emotions? At its core, it is still a damn fine Need for Speed game. It is very enjoyable to play. The physics are fantastic. The racing is great. And, I mean, I talked about the bots being a little bit frustrating to deal with at times, but overall, the game felt fantastic to play. The performance of the game was fantastic. I did have a few FPS drops playing it on my consoles, but other than that, that might be different from console to console. So, with that, thank you guys for watching. If you guys enjoyed, leave a like, subscribe. This game gets a solid 3 hot dogs out of 10. And, peace out!